Hello everyone, this is Community Belonging, Rosea speaking. I wanted to do a quick video. I'm hoping this is catching my face. I wanted to talk about some recent discoveries we've made and some not so recent ones. And to do that, I'm going to have to give some context. So this starts in 2015, and I'm going to put a content warning here for therapist abuse. Nothing graphic, just emotional, etc. I'm also going to put a disclaimer here that I'm not accusing anyone. I'm not saying that anyone did anything intentionally, because for the most part I don't think it was. But it is part of the explanation I'm about to give, the story I'm about to tell, and I feel like it needs to be included for the sake of accuracy. So, if those sorts of things are not something you can handle hearing, maybe aren't comfortable listening to, feel free to skip this video. I will warn the best I can when it comes up again, and that's what I'll do. So, we are plural, meaning we experience ourselves as being more than a single person. We do not have dissociative identity disorder, which is a disorder where the plurality causes distress and lost time, among a myriad of other symptoms. That's not something that we've experienced, but it is something that we thought we experienced for a while, and I'll get to reasons why that is in a moment. And it was something that we had been treated for on and off, which is again something I'll get to in a moment. Our story starts in 2015. I had felt like I needed something more in life after some pretty lonely and scary things had gone on, and so I created characters to both interact with, care for, and become when I needed to, because I liked to play with my own head. I liked to experiment with things, and I liked to see what individual states of mind would do, in theory, if they were isolated from one another. I had had a long-standing interest in rebirthing breathwork, which is a kind of healing modality, and it can even be turned into a lifestyle. And one of the characters I had created lived that in the inside of my mind. Another character, as an example of the kinds of things I liked to create, would hate everything man-made, and there was a vested backstory with her as well. She had been more a part of my history, as they all had been to a greater or lesser extent, and I'll get to that in later videos. But the point I'm trying to make is I created characters based on parts of my life that I didn't want to give up on, I didn't want to see diluted with time, I didn't want experience to erode. Me being autistic and adolescent and kind of afraid that maturity would take things away, thought, okay, I will preserve these things and these qualities I don't want to lose in other people who didn't interact with the world, and that was just a thing that I did, and it gave me joy, it gave me something to focus on. Now, this is the part where I CW for therapy-related trauma and potentially even abuse. I don't call it abuse, but it may be seen that way, so this is the part where I'm going to give you an opportunity to pause, because this is where things may get a little bit iffy. So, feel free to do that. When I was around that age as well, I was actively involved in therapy for some kind of related things, more touching on the loneliness aspect. And I liked her. She was nice. Um, but like I said, I was lonely. I wasn't very communicative with my parents or anybody else around me. I kind of felt isolated because of being blind and everything else and not being really understood by people. And so, that was why I'd created the characters. And she at first saw them as, okay, this is healthy, this is good and cool. But as things evolved and as more and more of my history and my memories kind of became intertwined with them, she started entertaining the idea that they kind of came out as a result of my childhood and traumas experienced there, which isn't an unreasonable conclusion to make. And it's not unreasonable that I believed it because, well, I trusted her and I believed her implicitly because no one could do any wrong, right? I mean, she was a professional. She wasn't going to do anything harmful to me. So I thought. And so I was like, okay, I believe it. The problem was, I hadn't discovered a community of people who created headmates. They call them tulpas in some circles. I think the other word is paragenic headmates. I hadn't discovered that community yet. And so what had ended up happening was she kind of put forward this idea of, well, what if they came around from trauma? And so over the next, I'd say 3 months, probably closer to 6, because I spent the summer there. The idea was initially put forward in like winter, and then I spent the following summer just kind of in and out of dissociative disorder support groups, and just kind of thinking, okay, I have this thing, let's try and find other people who also have it. The problem was she was saying, or at least implying, or I walked away with the impression that when I got stressed, new people came forward. And because I hadn't been educated, I hadn't been told, hey, you consciously created this so you can consciously kind of say no to it. And because all the resources I'd ever been exposed to said, you shouldn't doubt if a new headmate comes forward, you should probably try and validate them. Doubt is a product of the disorder, and kind of a product of the defenses your mind uses to shield you from the trauma. I just let it run away with me because I didn't know. And as a result, I had new headmates popping up left, right, and center, at even so much as a thought at one point of new people coming forward at something. I remember one example that sticks out to me was I was reading a book and had one of the characters from the book pop into my head because I got drawn to them. And I would take it to therapy, and therapy would enforce this idea that, well, you must have needed that person for some specific purpose, and it never quite lined up. At that point, I was like, this doesn't quite line up, but I was afraid to leave. I'd gotten attached to her. There were some specific things that she could provide that I couldn't ask for from anyone else. Not inappropriate things, but things I just wasn't comfortable asking for from other people that I desperately kind of wanted. And I just, I was afraid to leave and afraid to lose that. So I just went along with it. And I went along with it as well because I was like, well, okay, I hadn't lost my faith in her. I was like, all right, she's still a professional. She still knows what she's talking about. Maybe it's just something I'm missing. Da 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 da. It's fine. So, fast forward a little bit because this goes on and on for a while. It kind of replays the same cycles. To, I'd say summer of 2016, she leaves the practice. And by this point, I just need something to focus on, so I just dive in internally. And really, I bump into a lot of online people. That's all that really happens. But my way of interacting with the world was so freaking skewed toward being centered on plurality, right? Because that's what therapy was focused on, and that was pretty much my only interaction with anybody around me that I felt mattered. So that was the way I interacted with everybody around me as well. And some people got it, some people didn't. I mean, it's the internet, right? So people are going to do odd things. So that was the way I interacted with people, was through plurality, and it was really the only way I wanted to, because it was something I could explain to people. It was something I could be like, yes, I understand how this works. This is how this operates, because I couldn't explain me to them. I couldn't explain a lot of my own experiences to people around me, or people online, or people in general. So I would have rather done that way. I think it took me until 2020 to really kind of start to grow beyond that interaction style. And oh my god, I'm grateful to the friends I have who did help me get out of that, because oh my gosh, I could not have dealt with that for very much longer. Between 2016 and 2020, there was a lot of things that went on, but the most notable was that I still continued to buy into the whole idea that we were formed from trauma, and slowly started to open up the doors to, well, maybe spirituality had a thing or two to say about our origins as well. So now I was open to all kinds of spiritual input, and it went okay, except for the parts where it didn't. And a lot of those were because basically we were still, I guess you would call it highly suggestible. I don't like that term. But we were still in this mindset of, if any seeming new headmate shows up, you shouldn't invalidate them. You should always welcome anything that even remotely seems like it could be someone else. So we did. And we did, and we did, and we did, and we did. And we did that for a while, and we ran into some people we probably shouldn't have. Which is another story for another day. But essentially, in 2020, of course, COVID hit, and I think it was around 2020 or 2021, where we kind of started, we got out on our own, we moved into an apartment, and we were just like, you know what, because we got out of therapy appointments, like, it didn't have the environmental change, right, because everybody was at home. And we were like, you know what, we've been having these doubts, so we started entertaining those more. And we realized, holy crap, this isn't so black and white. This isn't, either or. We can have all of the things. And yeah, I kind of pushed the others away for a while and just lived as me, which is when I started learning, to interact with other people for my own darn context for a change. which was nice. Hard work, but it was nice and it paid off and it still continues to pay off. And just kind of grew in ways that I hadn't really been able to before the pandemic. And then it was like, okay, now I'm in a good place. So I reopened up to the others again. And I was able to embrace both the trauma-based and the paragenic type origin, and as well as the trauma origin, because some of that was accurate. It just wasn't the full story. And that's where I am at this point. We're a mixed origin system, and there's no shame in saying, yes, I created some of them. That is how I first started to be aware of the existence of some of the others. There's a little more nuance to all the things I've just covered here, and I'm going to cover those probably in later videos, but I wanted to put that out there so that we could have a foundation from which to explain what the heck we've been doing over the past few years, and why the heck all of our videos got pulled down. We pulled down all the videos because it was really painful for us to look back at that stuff and see where we were. We didn't want that to be public, and we didn't want to have to go back and patch up more holes until we were ready to. And I think now at this point we're ready to. We don't have videos anymore. We don't have them downloaded. So we can't put them back up, and honestly, I don't think it was a wise idea to put them up in the first place, because a lot of those early intro videos were made when a lot of the others were still forming and they couldn't take proper precautions against me, like, kind of leaning over them and influencing them. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, and I think we've covered enough. So, mixed origin system, got led off track by therapy for a while, realized it wasn't entirely inaccurate, but it wasn't entirely fully descriptive, walked away from the others, came back, rebuilt, we're back. Thank you for listening.